Hi everyone, and welcome to day 26 of this artificial intelligence project where we are kind of like making AI more accessible to more people. Quick recap from yesterday, we kind of like started thinking of a different way of organizing the transformations over data sets, and we kind of like discussed this concept of a pipeline, which happens to be a very well-known concept in machine learning, and kind of like figure out that maybe rather than having different like entries as we have here for data sets, visualizations, models, and predictions, maybe we have like a single view that allows us to do all the operations in a single place. All right, so today I don't want to say it was a boring day. I think there's a couple interesting things, but it was more on the kind of like software engineering side. And the specific kind of like thing that I want to show is yesterday we discussed Flow.js as a competitor or as an alternate technology to TypeScript. And kind of like a lot of the time that I spent today was actually getting Flow up and running. There is a configuration file that like you use to define kind of like on git ignore or your package.json file, etc. And then, like you want to, like add your command of how you want to trigger flow. In this case, it's just saying yarn flow check for my particular environment. And when I'm running things, I can just do yarn check. And basically what that triggers is it triggers the flow kind of like script analyzer. And most of the time, kind of like I spend it making our pipeline code a little bit more structured. So as you can see here, well, the first kind of like thing to declare is you want to say, or you want to mark which files are going to be analyzed by Flow, which is what we're doing here. And then you can define your data structures, similar in a similar way as the way that you would do it on TypeScript or even C++. We're defining that a pipeline, might have some parameters and some steps. And then, like for the particular functions that you're interested in, you can actually set the type of each of those functions and also the return value. And yeah, that's pretty much it, actually. I think that I have another example here. I did find a couple cases where, I opted in for getting out of Flow's syntax and type checking. And the reason is that some of the functions that I'm creating, for instance, for the code that gets executed and why not, they happen to be, they happened to be dynamic, right? So, like you could put a lot of like decorations just to kind of like get it to work. But for me, it's like, well, it's a dynamic function, right? Like don't bother decorating, this particular return type, just return it as kind of like void. Even though it's an actual function. So I actually kind of like enjoyed that flexibility of applying type checking to the things that I care about in my code and just, going for full on non-checked kind of like, declarations for some of their functions. I also took a look at a couple interesting things that are worth showing. So the first one is I took a look at a 3D scatter chart, and I don't know if I can zoom in here, maybe not. But yeah, this is a little bit more different than the charts that we've done. I haven't implemented an actual 3D chart, but I thought it was kind of like interesting. I personally don't love it that much. I mean, it's kind of like cool, but like, I'm not sure if it's super useful. Let me know what you think. But yeah, I think it's kind of like cool, but like, I don't even love it that much how it looks like. And, you have the code here that I took a quick look at. And one of the things that they're using, I believe here, are they? No, they're not using three. Yeah, they're using three.js, of course. Yeah, so it seems like in this case, they're using a combination of D3 and three.js. Three.js is an actual 3D library, which is actually very, very cool. Like there's a lot of interesting things to notice from their demos. I don't even know what they're doing, but they have like a 3D rendered map here, which looks pretty great. Let's see. Let me see if I can find a couple data, like some of them that could be used perhaps for data visualizations. I mean, this one is obviously really cool. It seems to be kind of like a 3D Earth. I'm not sure exactly what it does. But yeah, I think kind of like the point here, what I realized is that three.js is a pretty cool library. So it would make sense to, at some point, consider doing 3D charts. Wow, it's taking a while to load. But okay, like just look at this. This is actually quite awesome. I'm not sure exactly what this is about, but it just doesn't matter, right? It's just kind of like a great visualization, and I'm sure there's a few others. And kind of like related to that, I end up arriving to this library called Lumagl, and basically, yeah, Lumagl is advertised as a high performance toolkit for WebGL based data visualization. I didn't play that much with it. Seems they have good documentation. I like the demo that is simple. But I didn't explore much than that. Just kind of like directionally, and maybe related with some of the comments that we've received on YouTube. Like, well, it would be cool if the visualizations are actually interactive. So maybe we do something like that at some point. And actually, to that end, I kind of like started, like just figuring out if I could use three.js. I wasn't able to get it to actually work. So those are, I guess, the bad news. Yeah, so I think there's more work to do. One of the problems I think here, just with this kind of like quick demo, is that the way that we're including the libraries is non-traditional, right? Like we scope the libraries to kind of like the visualization that we're rendering. So in this particular case, maybe I need to change the way that we load the actual three.js library. But it's definitely something that I don't want to spend a lot of time right now, because we have higher priority work items, like actually getting, things to work. But at least directionally, this should be pretty useful to do at some point. All right, let me see. I think there's one comment from Carlos, kind of like follow up. Yesterday we were discussing that if you have data sets that are very wide and have like a lot of columns, maybe the UI wouldn't work as well, right? And I mentioned that, I haven't solved that problem, but Carlos was kind enough to give us a reference. And Carlos mentioned that this particular project, Rattle, has a user interface that, at least supports multiple columns in a much nicer way than what we would currently do, right? And this makes sense, right? Like if you're creating some sort of predictions, you a lot of times you want to use a lot of columns. So in this particular case, rather than dragging each of them to in the user interface, what they have here is a checkbox. So you just go ahead and figure out which ones are and which ones are not. Anyway, so yeah, I haven't looked at this particular tool apart from looking at this screenshot. I think when we hit that problem, we'll try to solve it in our own way. I think we could do actually a couple even more interesting things, like maybe you can just select like the entire fields with a kind of like a range type of selector. But anyway, so again, like one of the things that I'm trying to do here is kind of like just fixing the immediate problem at a time. Today, kind of like most of the day I spend it kind of like starting to reorganize, as I mentioned, the code to support Flow. So that was the big work item for today. But maybe tomorrow we'll have time to do something a little bit more interesting. Thanks for watching. I'll keep you posted and hope you're having a great week.